You've surely all heard that soil should never be left bare and that it's better if it's always mulched to protect it from the sun or rain. And what if I told you that in some cases or at certain times mulching is actually useless? And sometimes, like right now, for example, it's actually pretty risky to keep mulch at the base of your crops. That's not always true. Don't forget that the rules are never set in stone and there's always an it depends. I recommend you watch this video all the way through to learn how to choose in what way and when to cover or not cover the soil. In your case, what about you? And above all, why should you do it and what would happen if you didn't? Let's start this new Truck Smells episode where I debunk common misconceptions. Let's go! So first of all, why should we always mulch our soil? Now basically mulching is always mentioned as a way to protect the soil, and that's not wrong. It mainly protects against two things: sun, which can dry the soil and disrupt its living creatures. And the living creatures in the soil. The life in the soil is super important for crops. It also shields it from rain, which can form compact crusts on some soils. We call that a surface crust, which also harms soil life, respiration, and the germination of some seeds. So we try to avoid that at all costs. But be careful, this doesn't happen on all types of soil. It mainly occurs on soils with a silty tendency. If you don't know your soil type or texture, I recommend checking it out. I've already made a video about that. I'll put it over here where I explain how to find out your soil's texture. Well, that being said, mulching isn't the only way to cover and protect your soil. But among all the ways that exist, mulching is really the least interesting one for me. Alright, but be careful. The word mulching is a generic term. You can mulch with straw or hay. Dead leaves, grass clippings, wood chips, green waste like we have here, even sheep wool clippings. Why not use a plastic tarp? That's called plastic mulching. Actually, mulching your soil means covering it with a material, organic or not, that is dead. Let's explore why. Personally, I don't think mulching is the best way to protect the soil or its life. And we'll see later why right now mulching is actually more of a risk for crops. Saying plants need well-structured, living soil isn't totally accurate or complete. It doesn't tell the whole story. To be more precise, I would say that it really works both ways. Plants require living, structured soil to grow, but soil also needs plants to remain alive and structured. If that's not clear enough, I could also say that the soil can never really be living and structured if there aren't plants growing on it. Plants, thanks to photosynthesis, will produce sugars, some of which will be redistributed into the soil by the roots. These sugars feed bacteria and fungi, which then become food for other organisms and so on. I'm not going to cover the entire soil food chain, but remember, all these food chains start with plants, and that without them, everyone below, all the life in the soil would sooner or later end up starving. You see where I'm going with this, right? Imagine on soil that's been mulched for too long, where there are no plants growing, no crops at all the life in the soil would eventually disappear. That's not all. Plant, fungi and other soil organism roots maintain a well-aerated structure. Without plants, our soil would become compacted, making it even harder for vegetation to return. Alright, and now that we know all this, we can imagine how we could cover the soil, protect the soil in ways other than just using mulch. Just put living plants there instead. Let's look at that now. During the times when you're not growing vegetables in your garden, you can sow cover crops, which are also called green manures. These green manures, because of their mass, will have a similar effect to mulching. They'll protect the soil from the sun and the rain. But since these are living plants, they'll also keep the soil well structured and maintain the life within it very active. In the spring, when I start my crops, I'll simply mow them and leave them on the ground. So they'll serve for a while as fresh mulch, which will slowly decompose and also feed the next crop. Well, that's one way, among many others, to use green manure. There are plenty of ways to do it. If you're interested in the topic, I invite you to watch a video I've already made about it. I'll put a link over there if you want to check it out. Let's discuss another common issue that can occur when you heavily mulch your garden, which many of you may be experiencing. So, I don't really know what the weather is like where you are these days, but let me tell you, for me, it's something else. I struggle to shoot this video, juggling between the short periods of rain. It's been raining constantly, with over 100 millimeters falling here in a few days. And the rainy periods, which last a while, are often the times when we have the most slug and snail attacks. These creatures are adorable, but mostly very voracious and greedy. Young and tender plants like beans, young squash, cucumbers, and so on. Although they're usually nocturnal, that's when they attack our plants. Well, during periods that stay rainy and humid for several days, they'll come out at night, during the day, all the time. And that's really when we get the most damage. What do you think will happen if slugs appear in your garden during rainy weather? Especially in areas covered with straw, which, by the way, gives them great shelters to hide in, and on which nothing else grows except your crops. They're going to eat the only thing they can chew on, your crops. And since when do slugs have teeth? So they'll eat the only thing available to them, your crops, using their radula. So the solution would also be to have green manure crops grown on your cultivation areas. If you mow the green manure before planting, as I explained to you before, well, these green manures will decompose slowly, and these fresh decomposing plants will be a good food source for the slugs. They may even mainly eat that instead, so your crops will be somewhat protected. But if you don't have green manures in place on your growing areas, another solution could simply be to at least move the mulch away from your growing areas. As I mentioned earlier, mulch offers excellent hiding spots and shelters for slugs and small snails. By keeping them at your crop's base, they'll be ready to feed right there. Also, remember to replace the mulch after the rainy period to keep the soil from drying out in the sun. You really have to adapt according to the weather. So, to avoid slug attacks as much as possible, make sure to identify the periods that are favorable for them. For example, this year we had a very rainy spring, and there was a period when we had young, tender, fragile plants. We also just went through a period of frost that weakened some plants, making them even more attractive to slugs. And if we also have a well-kept garden with mulched areas where only our crops grow, they have nothing else to eat. Be careful, there's a risk. Removing the mulch alone won't solve everything. You won't completely get rid of slug and snail attacks, but at least by doing this, you don't make things easier for them and you can keep a better eye on them. Know that in a healthy and well-balanced garden, slugs and snails are normally not a problem at all. And if you want to learn different techniques to deal with them, I've already made a video about that too. I'll put a link over there if you want to check it out. You'll find different solutions to successfully live with gastropods. Alright, I hope you enjoyed all of this. If that's the case, feel free to let me know in the comments, leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next videos, or even share it. And if you want to help me financially to keep doing this work, you can do so by following the link over there to the Typee platform. And as always, a big thank you to everyone who already does it, without whom I wouldn't be able to take the time to make all these videos. Alright, good luck to everyone with the frost, the rain, the slugs and everything else. Wunder.